Yes, the relay on YouTube. Check it out. Lots of stories about me on there. All the boxing facts and info that you want in a very entertaining, educational manner. The relay. Check it out on YouTube.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay where we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, the fight between Claressa Shields and Ivana Habazin for what is the vacant WBO junior middleweight title. The fight date approaches. It's going down on October 5th. And, this was a fight that was supposed to have happened already, more or less. This was a fight that ended up getting pushed back because Claressa Shields sustained an injury, so things had to get postponed. But the fight is upon us. And leading up to the fight, some interesting developments. Ivana Habazin has enlisted the aid of what is the former IBF junior middleweight champion, Chris Namas, to assist her in preparations. Just as well, Ivana Habazin has enlisted the aid of none other than Raquel Miller. That's the same Raquel Miller who came up in the amateurs with Claressa Shields, with Marlene Esparza, Michaela Mayer, Tiara Brown, Franchon Cruz.
A lot of good fucking fighters.
Needless to say, this is a fighter that comes from a very good amateur pedigree. And in case you're not already aware, Raquel Miller and Claressa Shields, they ain't on each other's Christmas cards. These are professional rivals, and it just so happens that Raquel Miller is aiding Ivana Habazin in preparation for Claressa. And at minimum, what this communicates is that Ivana Habazin and her team, they mean business. They're not just going in there for a check. They're not just clout chasing. They mean to defeat and unseat Claressa Shields as one of the premier fighters in the sport of women's boxing, though whether or not they can is another conversation entirely. I think it's an interesting fight. I think it's an interesting situation. This will be Claressa Shields' attempt to become a champion in what will be her third weight class. She was a champion at 168, a champion at 160, undisputed champion, and now she's attempting to win what is the vacant WBO title at 154. A division with a bit more sizzle than either super middleweight or middleweight. There are more names to go around, more fights to be made. It's an intriguing situation, it really is. Given the barbs that both fighters have openly taken towards each other in social media, at the press conferences, we know there's no love lost between these two girls. And hopefully they can bring that fire, bring that same energy, keep that same energy once they're both in a squared circle. It's a solid matchup.
Look forward to seeing it.
But because this will be Claressa Shields' attempt to become a champion in yet another weight class, another conversation, a separate conversation arises. Is this enough for Claressa Shields to unseat Cecilia Brækhus as the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the sport of women's boxing? Now, ladies and gentlemen, like all conversations regarding the pound-for-pound list, whether it's men's boxing or women's boxing, there's a lot of contentions. There's a lot of, tenuous arguments, slaves to the moment, people that go with whatever the flavor of the month is, as opposed to a more logical, fact-based observation in regards to who number one really is. Not based on, not just based on what they're doing right now, but what they have done so far, taking the fighter's entire career into consideration to determine which fighter actually has a more legitimate claim towards being the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. Now, I'll tell you that while it is monumental for Claressa Shields to become potentially a champion in what would be a third weight class, beating Ivana Habazin to do it, that's not going to be enough for Claressa to unseat Cecilia on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list for that number one spot, and here's why.
Why?
Well, Claressa being able to become a champion in this many weight classes as soon as she has in such dominant fashion, it is monumental, and we're not overlooking that. But at the end of the day, if she beats Ivana Habazin and becomes the WBO champion at 154, she's not doing anything that Cecilia Brækhus hasn't done already. That's right. Cecilia Brækhus already beat Ivana Habazin years ago at welterweight in September of 2014 in what was their unification fight. That's right, that was a unification fight. At that time, Ivana Habazin was the IBF welterweight champion, and Cecilia, she took a belt. She beat her already years ago. So why would Claressa beating her here today, years later, move her past Cecilia when essentially Claressa's just catching up to things Cecilia did already? Doesn't make a lot of sense, right? You know that a lot is made in regards to how fast Claressa Shields became the undisputed middleweight champion. And it is a fantastic accomplishment. It's not something that everybody out there can do. But It more or less reminds me of the conversation we have in men's boxing when it comes to Vasyl Lomachenko. You know that, he became a 3-division champion and a unified champion much sooner than a lot of other fighters do. But at the end of the day, regardless of how fast he got there, that still doesn't put him on the level of some other fighters who have more career accomplishments that he has yet to catch up to. It's that kind of a situation where you got guys that want to crown Vasyl Lomachenko, pound for pound number one. You got guys who want to crown Claressa Shields, pound for pound number one, for the exact same thing, for the exact same reasons. That, she became an undisputed champion very quickly. And I'll tell you something, how fast it took them to get there, while it is commendable, while it is noteworthy, that in and of itself still doesn't put him or her on the level of some other fighters out there that are more accomplished. And it just so happens that Cecilia Brækhus, in the case of Claressa Shields, Cecilia Brækhus is far more accomplished than Claressa. Everybody was talking about how Claressa became an undisputed champion, right? Well, Cecilia Brækhus did that years ago, and she's defended the undisputed crown in the welterweight division 9 times. And she didn't defend that crown 9 times against rank amateurs or fighters with losing records, fighters on the outskirts of the sport that are barely boxers. No, sir. She defended those titles against some of the best and brightest fighters the sport of women's boxing has to offer. Context is key here, folks. If you're going to be objective and you're going to call it down the middle and you're going to stick to the facts, then context is key. This girl that Claressa Shields is about to fight, Ivana Habazin, not only did she already lose to Cecilia Brækhus approximately 4 years ago, but guess what? Michaela Lauren in 2016 actually stopped Ivana Habazin in 3 rounds. Michaela Lauren. That's the same Michaela Lauren that Cecilia Brækhus knocked out, not once, but twice, before and after becoming the undisputed welterweight champion. Okay, Cecilia beat her in the rematch in 2017, and before that, before Cecilia even had all the belts, she gave Michaela Lauren
Her first loss.
her first professional loss in 2010, back when Michaela was undefeated. These are the kinds of fighters that Cecilia has fought over the years, leading up to becoming an undisputed champion and subsequently a defending undisputed champion. These are the kind of fighters that she's fought. Pound for pound fighters like Erika Farias, Sophie Ann Mathies. Solid contenders like Jennifer Retzke, Chevelle Hallback, who beat Layla McCarter not once, not just once, but twice. These are the kind of fighters that you will find on Cecilia Brækhus' resume, so rest assured, I'm not taking shots at Claressa. I think Clarissa's a fantastic fighter, but it's not presumptuous for me to say that as far as what she's got going on, in retrospect with what Cecilia has already accomplished, Claressa's got more catching up to do. And beating Ivana Habazin, a girl that Cecilia beat years ago, that's not a strong enough argument for Claressa to unseat Cecilia on the Ring IQ pound for pound list. It strengthens Claressa's argument. It certainly makes it more difficult for the girls ranked behind Claressa to move past her. But as far as that fight in and of itself being enough for Claressa to unseat Cecilia, no. The argument is simply not there. So look, I think it's monumental that Claressa Shields has gotten to where she's gotten to in such a short amount of time. I do, and I think she's a fantastic fighter. I think she's one of the best and brightest in the sport. But if we're going to stick to the facts, if we're going to be objective and use logistics, then no, the argument's not there. I'm sorry. Maybe, one's own personal enthusiasm may leave them so inclined to rank Claressa ahead of Cecilia, but if we stick to the facts, if we look at this objectively, no, argument's not there. Moving on.
Joyce's manager put out a tweet saying that he would love to take that fight next with Joe Joyce. What do you think with you?
Georgia's got to earn it.
And he was hurt.
I messed up. A lot of ways to handle a situation. I handle it wrongly.
There's 2 things in boxing you have to have if you want to skip the line. 1, you got to have money.
Back comes Joyce. What a response.
A ranking or a belt, you know what I mean? So,
And still, WBA Heavyweight Champion.
whatever they want to come to the table and have something that makes sense, then no problem.
All right, first of all, let's get this straight. 'Cause I ain't got no time to make no highlight videos and all that. Like, that shit's corny. Number one, we all know Joyce don't got a tough bone in his body. I don't even know if he have a bone in the body where he fight. I know it's his 5-foot manager maybe 110 pounds soaking wet. Don't you know I will pick your little ass up and dump you in a garbage can and beat Joyce with the garbage can? Let me tell your lurch looking at something. You know you don't want no smoke. The first time you see me, you almost shit yourself. You I am group looking mofo. Like, bro, stop doing shit for clout. Because I will smoke you. And tell your goddamn old ass promoter to stop tagging me in his retarded ass posts. I would duct tape his asshole, handcuff him to the bathroom sink, and feed him prune juice so he die of constipation. I'm not the one, bro. Believe me, I'm not the one. If you really was serious, my manager would be calling me with an offer right now. But you're full of shit. I will beat the 1%, 1 and 3-4% of black left in your ass. Whatever the hell you is. I don't know if you're from Aruba.
So this has become a thing. Jarrell Miller and Joe Joyce openly trading barbs via social media. This isn't the first time that this potential fight has become a talking point. Some months ago, there were rumblings of a fight between the two, and it was Jarrell Miller that stated that Joe Joyce ain't got the money. He hasn't got the kind of money to pay to get Jarrell in the ring. That's what Jarrell Miller was saying before. Now the story seems to be, at least according to Joe Joyce, that Jarrell Miller is requesting a warm-up fight ahead of what would be a fight between them. That's according to Joe Joyce. And let's just cut the shit. Let's just cut through the bullshit. At the end of the day, the biggest names at the weight are all preoccupied doing other things. Tyson Fury's gonna be in action this weekend against Otto Valen. Deontay Wilder, he's supposed to be having that rematch with Luis Ortiz. Anthony Joshua, Andy Ruiz, they're all tied up with each other. The who's who guys, they're all busy, and it's conceivable that in their next fights, they're still going to be busy. The winner of Joshua versus Ruiz is likely going to have to fight Kubrat Pulev in defense of the red belt. The winner of Wilder versus Ortiz, you know, conceivably they'd be moving into a Tyson Fury fight. You know, conceivably, if it's Wilder. So the biggest names are busy right now, and they're going to be busy in the near future. In which case, what else is there for these guys what else is there left for these guys to do than fight each other?
I don't know.
I mean, if you want to make a name for yourself, if you want to get somewhere, you've got to have the fights. In all honesty, they've got to create their own interesting situations in the in-between time while the biggest names at the weight iron out their own situations. You can't spend that duration of time knocking off stiffs and no-hopers in uninteresting matches thinking you're going to get somewhere, thinking it's going to lend itself to your marquee value. It's not. I defer to the fight we saw not too long ago involving Daniel Dubois and Nathan Gorman. That was a battle of the unbeatens the same way that this is a battle of the unbeatens. There's a lot on the line in that fight. There was. These guys were gambling their professional records and what momentum they had garnered up until that point, but the victor got a considerable profile boost. The victor being Daniel Dubois. Now he's being touted as one of the most talented young up-and-comers in the entire division. That is, as a result of participating in that situation. He's gotten a profile boost, having taken his chances against the then unbeaten Nathan Gorman. I look over at this situation, and Jarrell Miller's undefeated, Joe Joyce is undefeated. What the fuck else are you guys doing right now that you shouldn't fight each other?
Not a lot.
That's all I'm saying, that if Joe Joyce wants it, and Jarrell Miller wants it, we wouldn't be seeing the friction that we're already seeing. So what we are looking at, to some extent, is a pissing contest. A lot of bravado. But at the end of the day, if both guys really wanted to fight, then the fight would get made. So that communicates to me that somebody doesn't want it. I know that in the sport of boxing, there's no shortage of instances to where the fans and the fighters are playing the blame game with each other. There are no shortage of these instances, but look, when two guys want to fight, the fight happens. Like what we saw with Vasil Lomachenko and Jorge Linares, like what we saw with Jose Ramirez and Maurice Hooker. When both guys really want the fight comes off with minimal friction, whereas what we're seeing here is almost a verbal sparring session between the two fighters, because nobody wants to take the blame for the fight not happening. Nobody wants to be the guy that walks away from a situation, not in the public eye, you understand. Behind closed doors maybe, but not in the eyes of the public, because the public, they're gonna make you pay for it, for months and months, and social media, and your comments, and just your profile as a fighter overall. These are the people that you are trying to appeal to. The people that you want to come see your fights. The people that you want to buy your fights if you end up being a pay-per-view attraction of some kind. These are the people that you're attempting to appeal to. And those people, they're not going to find it too appealing that you're walking away from interesting situations to go kick the Medicans. So that's why we're seeing the pissing contest that we're seeing. That's why we don't see that this fight is in the works. That the wheels are in motion for it. But you know, just outside looking in, this is a fight that makes sense, cause given the state at the weight, what the fuck else is there for these two guys to do but fight each other, you know? They've got to participate in interesting fights. You can't just keep fighting Tamaz Adamex and Fred Cassis in the in-between time, hoping something big happens. A big fight already landed in Jarrell Miller's lap, and he fucked it up for himself. He really did. So now, you've got to create the situations. You have to. And this is just such a situation that could lend itself to Jarrell Miller's profile. I highlight Jarrell Miller because he's got more pro fights, more pro experience than Joe Joyce. You know, Joe Joyce, he comes from a great amateur background. He's an Olympic silver medalist, but he doesn't have that much pro experience. He doesn't have that many fights. And we know that he's working at an accelerated rate because he's no spring chicken. This guy's in the same neighborhood as Deontay Wilder in terms of age. All right, yeah. So if you see that Joe Joyce is calling you out and he's saying that he wants to fight you, this, that, and the other, take him up on his offer. Whatever it is. Because what the fuck else have you got going on? What? Even if you don't think they're being serious, even if you think this guy's just name dropping for the purposes of clout chasing, push the envelope, okay? Call their bluff. See what kind of money they're offering you, because I'll tell you that for Jarrell Miller, it's not like he can really afford to hold out. You hold out on these guys, it's not like Matchroom is an option for you. You done burnt that fucking bridge. The PBC, their priority is Deontay Wilder, and mostly Deontay Wilder, okay? So you got Joe Joyce, he's over there at Queensberry Promotions, BT Sport. He's showing an interest in you at a time when nobody's interested in you.
Not right now.
Why not take him up on his offer? If you're gonna catch this guy, now would be the opportune time because he doesn't have much pro experience. So if you want to get this guy and get him good,
Do it now.
Now would be when the getting is good. I think that fight could get a warm reception. I think that that's a fight that could get attention. We know how both guys operate. Both Jarrell Miller and Joe Joyce, they're both pressure fighters. So this has the potential to be a barn burner in and of itself. A nice punch-up. Given Jarrell Miller's ability to sell a fight, to trash talk, we saw what his banter did ahead of what was to be his fight with Anthony Joshua. You know, he can have his own situations, but he can't be a hardliner 100% of the time. He's gonna have to take some risks, especially what he's coming from, and especially with what's going on at the weight. So while I don't know if this fight will or won't happen, I will say that I think it should. Because if it doesn't, okay, you pass on this to do what?